Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, sports fans. It's time to pull up your socks, get your mind on the game, and give us 110%. Welcome to another high-scoring episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Now, today we're bursting out of the blocks with a story about how we can now check on our heart health with digital animation and a bit of wearable tech. We'll take a peek through your neighbour's window to see what their RoboVac does that yours does not. And we've got some health tips for you, which might involve taking a break from screen time while you're on the throne, shall we say. But before we get into any of that, we have to take care of one of the most important items on the agenda, and that is to welcome Matthew Dickerson to the microphone. How are you today, Matt?
I am fantastic, thank you, James. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Apple, but not really go into detail about their latest products because every man and his dog.
Because everyone's doing it, yep.
That's right, everyone's already done that. And we here at our podcast like to look at the future, more to the future rather than something that came out 3 days ago. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just the innovation concept and where we are. And I'm quite fascinated and intrigued that we're still coming up with things that are innovative and we're still inventing things and being creative. And
so all the ideas haven't been thought of yet?
Oh, not yet, apparently. So one of the things I think that if you're a technologist or if you're working for a large multi-tech company at the moment, I actually don't think the limitation is the technology. I think it's the imagination, because I think at the moment, whatever you imagine doesn't take that long before it's real.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about some of the examples that we've talked about a little bit in terms of fiction, cartoon characters, that type of thing that become real. So I put a bit of a list together. So 1946 was when Dick Tracy comic series first came out. And, of course, Dick Tracy had the wrist phone call.
Yeah.
Or the watch phone, or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's exactly called. But you go back to that and we all go, oh, isn't that clever? Wouldn't that be interesting? And, of course, now we all walk around with watches that can do all sorts of amazing things, including take phone calls. Not video calls yet, but give it time, James, give it time. 1962, I used to be a fan of Richie Rich, the comic series. And, of course, one of the things that Richie Rich had was a video phone. And I remember thinking to myself, well, that would only work if the other person had a video phone, but it never seemed to be an issue in the comic series. Richie Rich would take a phone call, and there's his video phone. Presumably he only spoke to his rich mates. 1965, Maxwell Smart, of course, came along with a shoe phone. That's right. And it seemed a bit silly. Just carry it on you somewhere. If you could fit it into a shoe, then maybe you could fit it somewhere else. But it used to be very comical, of course, when you'd take off a shoe and start dialing as if a shoe phone. They got all that technology in the shoe, but they still had a dialer on the phone. And, of course, so Rich's video phone, mobile phones. 1968 was when HAL 9000, we first heard that eerie voice of HAL. HAL, of course, stands for Heuristically Programmed Algorithmic Computer. They left off the C, but that's fine. So we are now talking.
That was 2001 Space Odyssey, yeah?
Correct, that's right, yeah. And so we're now talking to our computers the same as we talked to HAL from 1968. And the other one.
And, of course, there's a legendary little tidbit about how HAL is very closely related to IBM.
Yes, indeed.
Gotcha, yeah.
So the other one was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Douglas Adams, of course, introduced in 1979 the concept of the Babel fish. And
Douglas Adams, what a legend.
It was, absolutely. And I love the description that he gave where he gave this very detailed description of the Babel fish that basically eats various telepathic information from around it and then excretes out other things and goes in and basically it says at the end of all that description is the practical outcome of all of that is that you put it in your ear and you can understand any language that's spoken, which is a very convenient way for Douglas to be able to have people from across the universe communicate simply with each other.
Yeah.
The Babelfish was obviously very popular across the universe, but that's where I wanted to get to now. So with the latest announcements from Apple, there's some pretty interesting and cool innovations, and one of them is with the latest AirPods Pro 3,
They've created a Babelfish.
That's right. You put that in your ear, just like any earbud, but it will do live translation.
Wow.
Now, again, that sounds great if the other person's got AirPods Pro 3 as well, but you can still use your phone. So you can listen to them and it'll translate on the fly. When you speak back, you can hold up your phone to let them read it, or it will actually do it from your phone. So you can still do it a bit clumsily. Yeah. And I've done that in the past overseas with a phone and use an app on there, and I'd talk and then I'd translate and go back and forth, all a bit stilted and clumsy.
Yeah.
with the AirPods Pro 3, which I haven't tested out yet, but with the AirPods Pro 3, they promise that it will be more seamless. So magically, if you and I were speaking different languages, we could theoretically have AirPods Pro 3 and speak with a pause as we went and actually have a conversation with
It used
someone.
to blow me away. If I was watching the news and they cut to a story about the UN, you have all the people with those earpieces on, obviously listening to the translations in their preferred tongue, and it used to blow me away that they could just do that and get it done so quickly. And obviously they would have someone who was translating for them. But now everyone will have access to this
That's right.
technology.
And I've seen some examples exactly like that where they said, this feels like the UN. You could all just sit around with your AirPods in and listen to whatever's been spoken. You know, that's fantastic. Of course, the UN uses human translators, but, well, maybe for not much longer. I do find it intriguing, though, and I've mentioned it before, I've been overseas, I've had translators with me, and you'll say something that goes for 20 seconds and they say 2 seconds. And you go, really?
I don't think you said what I said.
Did you capture the full essence of what I said there? And then other times they go the other way. You'll say 3 or 4 seconds and then they go 20
elaborate.
seconds. That's right. Are you saying I've got a pointy nose? What are you saying about me?
Yes.
Now,
Why are they laughing?
That's right. It wasn't a joke. But that was the other use. I spoke to a friend about the AirPods Pro 3 and their first reaction was, oh, fantastic. I'm going to my local nail salon, putting in these AirPods Pro 3, and there's some people who speak other languages at my local nail salon, and are they speaking about me or are they saying what they watched on TV last night? Now I'll be able to know, and then I just want to sit there for the whole time my nail's being done, and at the end of that, I just want to make a little comment that lets them know that I listened to their whole conversation. You don't have to say it's being done with some magic. But that was one. But I thought a couple of other things was, one was the fact that you've now got your AirPods doing your heart rate. And I've talked about it before. Once upon a time, big chunky chest band, how painful. Yep, that's all that'll have to happen. You'll never be able to do your heart rate any other way. We've now got watches that do that very easily. We've now got AirPods that do that. So if you don't feel like running with a watch on your wrist, then run with your AirPods in to do your heart rate while you run. So that was pretty cool. And the other thing, I mean, I do love how Apple is so good at hyping things up. So one of the things they've done in their new Air phone, this is the 5.6 millimeter thick phone they brought out, although that's cheating a bit because it's 5.6 millimeters for most of it, but then there's a thicker bit at the top where all the technology is housed. Right. But they talk a bit about the fact that this is eSIM only. You don't have a clumsy SIM card that you put into the phone. This is a new innovation. Yes, eSIM's been around for a little while, but eSIM only, not many phones are eSIM only, because by removing the tray where the SIM card would go, we've been able to extend the battery life because we can feed the battery into there. What a wonderful innovation. And I thought back to the very first phone. The first phone I ever connected for a client was the 26th of July, 1990, give or take a day or two.
Famous day.
And on that day, the way we connected a phone was with an 8-digit ESN, electronic serial number, I assume it stood for. And that was something that was a serial number for that phone, that physical phone. And I would say, James, your number is, back then 9 numbers, 018 123 456. And I would program that number to be connected to that electronic serial number of that phone. Right. There was no SIM card. It was just a serial number matched to that. And then in the network, it would know that looking for that number, look for that serial number. But eSIM now is suddenly this wonderful innovation where you've just got electronic
so
serial
you're saying
number.
Technology has gone full circle we are back to 1990.
That's basically it. That's what I'm saying in a very long-winded way. But it is fascinating. Some of the innovations we saw I thought were quite impressive and we're still seeing them. And again, I can imagine if I'm running Apple or Samsung or any of the tech companies, the big tech companies, I'm going, what next? Let's get some kids that just are creative and just get them in and say, what do you want? Get Homer Simpson and design that new car. What do you want? It's just
dangerous, but also entertaining.
Entertaining, that's right. So anyway, I think we've still got a long way to go in our podcast. Is the bottom line for all that.
Yeah,
we're not shutting it down this week.
Great news for you, folks.
That's right.
And it's now time for us to get stuck into our lineup of stories today. Our first one is all about great news for the myopic and hyperopic among us. Now, I'm reasonably new to wearing glasses, and my optometrist has recently put me onto some multifocals. Now, I don't mind sharing that I reckon that they take some time to adjust to. And every now and then I have to shift my posture to focus properly on a screen or a book, and it's not always a natural posture. But Matt, things are about to change for people who wear glasses, and it's all so much more user-friendly these days.
Now, do you find yourself just exercising your neck muscles with multifocals because you've got to move your head
you've got to do that little bit of a nod.
Right.
Yeah, and so the posture feels a little bit unnatural sometimes. And you do the whole, I used to laugh at old people who are stretching their arms to read a book or whatever.
That's right. But my eyes are fine. My arms aren't long enough is my problem.
Yeah, so multifocals are good, I've got to say, generally. But there's still times where I find that I've got to, oh no, hang on, that magnification isn't just in the right spot.
Yeah,
and
it is
it's
quite
slightly awkward.
So go back to bifocals. My dad used to have bifocals. I remember he'd be looking down through the little magnified part at the bottom to read the paper and then look up through the top part to talk to you. Bifocals go back to the 1780s. Benjamin Franklin supposedly pioneered this. Now, maybe he saw it somewhere else and then he was a bit more famous. He did. Yeah. But he actually cut two pieces of glass together and stuck them together. So you had literally a small bit of glass at the bottom and a bigger bit of glass at the top, and they had different focuses or focal lengths. And so he'd move his head up and down. And so it started from there.
Fair enough, too. As the first one, that's probably what you should do.
That's right. Cut a couple of bits of glass up. So that obviously was part of it. But bifocals in terms of building lenses on there, obviously we've done it much better than just two bits of glass stuck together. Multifocals, 1959, I was fascinated to find out.
Right.
Were the first multifocals, but they didn't really take off until about the 1990s, maybe the 2000s, because the manufacturing processes were a bit clumsy in those early days. And of course, this is mainly to treat presbyopia, which is basically what you and I have got, which is getting old.
Curses.
And the lens becomes a bit less flexible.
Yeah,
so we might have had perfect vision. I never wore glasses till I was in my late 40s.
Yeah,
and then I went, again, the arms were getting not long enough. And then suddenly I had to start looking at glasses. So again, this is all about that. And there's lots of ways to treat that, but glasses is what we normally do. So all of that having been said, that's all okay. Multifocals are okay. But wouldn't it be more convenient if we had the whole lens to look at things up close or in the distance as we need it? Now, some researchers have got liquid crystal bifocals that electronically switch between near and distance at the moment at the tap of a button. Bit clumsy to go and tap the side of your glasses to go, I want to read up close, tap, want to look out the distance, tap. But again, this is in the studio or in the laboratory. This is working away to get something working. The other problem with this at the moment is it's 5 seconds to switch between near and distance. Yeah. That's a bit clumsy.
We're not quite there yet, folks.
Not quite there yet.
But you say liquid crystal, right? So I think of LCD, liquid crystal displays. Is this a display that occurs on the glass for you? Or are you looking at that? Or is the actual refractive index changing of the glass?
Well, you're not changing the glass per se, but what you are changing is some thin film of electrodes across the glass.
Right.
And the way that the power changes that is that thin electrodes will steer those liquid crystal molecules to bend light slightly differently depending on what it needs to do. So it's not replacing the glass with a liquid crystal display.
Yeah.
It's putting something over the glass, which you can't see, obviously, but it's obviously bending that light ever so slightly. Researchers say that they believe they'll be able to get down to the response rate to be about 185 milliseconds, which is not too bad because I don't think I'd notice that.
That is pretty close, yeah, because when you think about it, you change your focus how many thousand times in an hour.
Correct.
And so, you need it to happen quickly.
So at the moment, tap on the side, 5 seconds is not good enough. They're not going to sell any with that. But when they get down to 185 milliseconds and when they get down to the fact that they will detect how far away something you're looking at. So what the researchers are talking about is they can easily work out where the glass is pointed, how far away something is. So that's an easy thing for it to do, right? So you point there, I know that I'm half a metre away or 5 metres away or 10 metres away. That's not a problem at all. But where are your eyes looking?
Yeah,
and that's right. Where researchers are talking about they will build glasses at some stage in the near future that will not only detect how far away your glasses is focused at, but where your eyes are looking. So it will determine how much it needs to change the actual display. So very cool and multifocal, but multifocal without needing to move your head, without needing to move up or down, without needing to just move around that gaze a little bit, as I'm doing now, which people can't see me doing that. But as you're moving around, you do. With multifocals, you do change exactly where you're looking.
And so we're not looking at having to press a button to change the focus, though. No. You're wanting it to be able to read your eyes to see where your eyes are focusing at.
Yep.
And then determine the focus is required.
And then determine where you're looking at and how far away that thing is that you're looking at and then change that.
And how bad your eyes are. Because Because everyone's got different eyes, so different
That's
prescriptions.
right. And do all that in 185 milliseconds. So, yes, we're not there yet. Let me think.
I reckon glass makers of the future.
I reckon they'll have a commercial version that's still not great, but it's a first working version within 2 years. Okay. But I reckon it'll be 5 years before we'll just put glasses on, and wherever we look, oh, look at that, it's focused for us. Look at that, oh, it's focused for us. Because, of course, some people are going for the laser option for their eyes, which is an unbelievable option. I've talked to people that have had it done, and it's a miracle. They talk about it as a miracle. They go in, they have their eye knocked out essentially, and it sits there. They get lasered, they have a patch on, they take the patch off that day or the next day, and they go, oh, I can see. It's a miracle. So that's an option that people are doing, and that's certainly got some convenience about it, but also glasses that just work out where you're looking and change their focal length depending on that.
Many solutions to the same problem.
Yeah, indeed. And it is a problem. We haven't been able to solve that particular part of the problem
for
getting
a
old.
long time. Now, just how attached to your phone are you? Something of a telltale sign might be in whether or not you're able to go to the toilet without it. No judgment here, folks, but a trip to the loo used to represent a break from everything else, a chance to shut the world out for some you time, let's say. But these days it tends to represent 5 minutes or more, let's face it, of screen time. Uninterrupted screen time, folks. But Matt, there are some alarming potential health consequences of not putting it away while you mind your own business.
I've actually been talking about this a little bit on radio during the week, and I've had a few people call me and say, well, actually, this isn't a new problem. It's an old problem. And I started to think about my dad, who was famous in our family for not only having the newspaper in the toilet, but having the crossword. And if you go in and see, you sit down after Dad had been there, the crossword would be mostly done. And I remember getting Dad a Christmas present one year, which was a roll of toilet paper with crossword puzzles. So it's been around for a long time, people sitting on the toilet. And maybe sometimes it is an escape for people. Maybe it's something where they go, I don't think I'm going to be interrupted here.
Yeah.
In our current household, then there was a problem when we were first setting up internet and setting up our wireless access points around the household. I thought I was pretty well covered with 3 wireless access points, but one of my daughters complained bitterly that when she went to the toilet, she didn't get a strong enough Wi-Fi signal. I needed to leave the door open, which isn't great for the rest of the family, Dad. So I had to put a 4th wireless access point in to make sure the entire house was covered, including the toilet. Now, if I had have known this research then, I might have said, well, darling, maybe we should put a Faraday cage around the toilet to stop you because...
Yeah, and buy some crosswords.
No, because it's still not solving the problem. They're still saying that for too long. So they did a study on a bunch of people having colonoscopies, and they had to fill in a survey. So it's self-reported, so that's not always perfect, but they had to fill in a survey about their smartphone toilet use. And what they found was that people that used their smartphone, and typically used the smartphone for longer lengths of time, so on the toilet for longer, were typically 46% at a higher risk to have hemorrhoids than people who didn't use their smartphones.
Wow.
That's a fairly big difference. Now, what was fascinating about that was that 37% of these users found that they spent more than 5 minutes per toilet visit. It's pretty easy to do that. If you get on some sort of social media site, 5 minutes is going in a heartbeat.
You can hours.
That's right, hours. That's right. Yeah, what about the 5-hour ones? What about those ones? So
Your legs have gone to sleep.
That's right. 7.1% of non-users compared to 37% of users, smartphone users, spent more than 5 minutes or less than 5 minutes. So quite fascinating in terms of that. So it's pretty obvious. It does make sense. If you get on there, you can easily get down that rabbit hole and
Bingo.
You forget how long you've been on there. So the most common smartphone activities, which surprised me actually, the most common was reading the news. 54% of people said they read the news on the toilet, whereas only 44% social media. I thought.
Well, I wonder if a lot of people are reading the news through social media.
Well, it could be that too. Yeah, it might be spot on. So it might be a combination of those. The other one is that many users underestimated their time spent. So when they had to fill in the survey to time their time, they went, oh, I didn't realise I spent so much time there. And then smartphone users, no surprise there, were younger on average. So all these people having colonoscopies, they were younger. Now, not many 20-year-olds have colonoscopies, so they were probably more aged anyway, but the average people using the smartphone were 55 years, average non-users 62 years, which again surprised me that one wasn't more of a gap between those. So apparently the whole idea of sitting on a chair is better for our pelvis and for lack of hemorrhoids than sitting on the toilet where it's unsupported. So I don't want to get too medical here because I'm not a medical expert, but essentially that makes sense. So what they're trying to do now is they're saying a public health tip is limit your screen time to a 2 TikTok stint. So
Just 2 TikToks.
That should give you enough time to say that's been long enough on the toilet. And if you really just like that private time, maybe put a chair in the toilet and just close the door and sit there and just play on the phone on the toilet without actually doing damage to your rear end.
Have we got a new SI unit for time on the toilet?
For time, that's right, yep. New SI unit is how many TikToks? How many TikToks are you on the toilet for? Oh, 17. What? That's terrible.
You got hemorrhoids.
Hemorrhoids, that's right.
Now, wearables are becoming just so 2024. A new discovery is in Plus-Fi. Get this, folks. Simply standing in the vicinity of a Wi-Fi source may be enough to do the sort of heart monitoring that up until now has required some physical skin contact. Matt, what are the ins and outs of this?
Last week we talked about the AI stethoscope, so we've got a bit of AI being thrown around. This week, this is even more fascinating, being able to measure your heart rate using your Wi-Fi, maybe on the toilet, maybe not on the toilet, but using your Wi-Fi to detect the change in signal. So that the Wi-Fi is sending out a signal, obviously, and it's receiving a signal as your device comes back. Slight interruptions by monitoring or measuring what the Wi-Fi router is receiving back, they can pick up the heart rate of someone within 3 meters of a router.
Wow.
3 meters. That seems like an incredible distance for a Wi-Fi signal to go out and go, oh, we've detected just some little interruptions in that. Now, of course, the conspiracy theorists out there are now going to say, there you go, there's proof that all these signals, all this electromagnetic radiation is doing damage to our body. It's not
microchip or no?
Microchip, definitely.
Yeah, okay.
So with this, it's not doing damage to our body. It's basically just saying that, yes, as the heart is beating, there is something that we can detect with very fine detection modes that something is changing there. And so they did this for 5 seconds of monitoring, and then compared that to someone. So someone will sit there with a traditional heart rate monitor and they'd use a Wi-Fi monitor for 5 seconds and they were getting it within half a beat per minute of accuracy.
Wow.
So pretty good would be what I'd say in terms of half a beat per minute. Yeah. So fascinating. Now, where would you want to use this? Why wouldn't you just use a watch or put a chest band on or whatever? Well, one of the ways I thought this would be brilliant would be in an aged care facility. In the room, for example, of a person in an aged care facility, you could have a few of these sensors around, and then if suddenly the heart rate dropped or dropped to nothing, then could be alert go off quite quickly so that maybe someone's had cardiac arrest and they can be saved, or maybe they've got some sort of abnormal rhythm, or maybe their heart's racing. A whole range of things can be picked up just by having that sensor. The other one I liked was the idea of in the bedroom I better clarify this. When you're sleeping in the bedroom, people are now trying to detect things like the quality of your sleep, how much sleep you're getting, what your heart rate's doing. I know I do wear my watch to bed because I am interested in what my heart rate does overnight, but some people don't like the feel of that watch on their wrist, or they like to charge up overnight, whatever. Having something to detect your heart rate and also probably detect your breathing rate, which might help with the detection of sleep apnea. So a whole range of things for a wireless concept. But again, I go back to what I talked about at the beginning of the show, the creativity. Someone sat there and went, hey, maybe we could use Wi-Fi to check heart rate. And everyone else in the room said, you're an idiot. And then someone said, I'm going to try that. And they still said, you're wasting your time. And then now they've gone, hey, look at this. And everyone went, yeah, we told you to work. But imagine thinking of this, like I would never have thought.
I wonder if it's going to be used in things like diplomatic or business, big business negotiation, where you've got the person who's opposite you.
That's right.
Whether you got them on the ropes or not.
Yeah, I like that. I like it. But this is the thing, it's fascinating. So
Stepping in with, see how Putin just does respond when you start to raise your voice a little bit.
That's right. But I still think this is fascinating to just even think of this as an idea, because I wouldn't have thought there was any way known to mankind that the sensitivity on a Wi-Fi router would be good enough to actually pick this up. Yeah. And don't mistake this. This isn't special equipment. They're using standard Wi-Fi routers with some additional software to be able to pick this up. So I just think it's brilliant. So aged care facilities, maybe in our homes, just anywhere we need to be able to check our heart rate and just check our overall health. I just think it's brilliant.
We've fed the conspiracy theorists, though.
Absolutely.
Now, for competitors at the highest level, regardless of the sport, the edge of understanding every nuance of how your body functions can be the difference between a podium finish and a participation certificate. Wearables linked to AI have been the gift to champions of every code. But get this, folks, the very latest in sports science is to make a digital replica of your heart and study how it behaves under stress. Matt, some athletes are making some surprising discoveries about themselves.
They are, and I do love the idea here. Again, it's starting off with a group of 20 elite athletes, they've all marathon runners and very high-level marathon runners. So they start off with people that are very good and very focused on this.
Well, they're the ones who you're going to see a greater response to any sort of stress. I think a more immediate sort of response.
And I think they're probably going to be more focused on it as well. If you just said, let's get 20 average Joe Blows, I go, I have a better look at that, that's fine, but it's probably not going to be the same level of focus. But the first thing they do, of course, is they go and get an accurate replica of the heart. So they do some MRI scans, they do some ultrasounds and a whole range of tests on there, and they go, great, now we can see your heart in all its glory, but it's your heart as well. It's not, here's what a heart would look like in a digital version. And then they basically go and simulate some various stresses. And so training stresses, race stresses, a whole range of things just to see how that heart responds. How good can they get that? Well, of course, they do all the monitoring and testing on the real heart in the first place to get all that information and then add that in. And so as with any simulator, if you put enough data in, you're probably going to get pretty accurate data out of it. And then they started to do some things. So they did some simulations. And so one runner discovered that he was better to run in the morning rather than late in the afternoon because that affected his sleep. So he didn't know that about himself. But once they did some simulations and a whole range of different simulations, and keep in mind, you can run all these, you can sit back on the lounge and relax and watch TV, all these simulations are running over on the computer somewhere on your digital heart, and you go, right, like I didn't run this morning because I'm going to run this afternoon. There was another runner that found that after a race or a hard run, their heart took about 14 days to fully recover. So don't go and train too hard in that 14 days afterwards. And again, their routine in the past had been, oh yes, I've run that hard race, I'll rest for 2 days, then I'll start running. And within 7 days, they're back to their full training regime. But no, 14 days is what you needed. In fact, running after 7 days was bad for you because your heart was still in recovery mode from that hard race that you just did. Yeah, wow. So all these things are quite fascinating.
I wonder what sort of response really, things like those ice baths. You see, it's quite popular for people to jump in an ice bath these days, and I think that's something to do with the heart. I wonder if there is any merit in it, or if it's just anecdotal.
It'd be good to have that as a simulation. And I remember talking to an NRL player, rugby league player, years ago, and he said they would finish the game of footy and their entire body was bruised from all the hits they taken. I think they used the ice bath to get in and try and reduce the bruising and the swelling of all of that. But then you see other people who obviously aren't in contact sport, and they get in the ice bath. And I remember seeing one. I remember talking to that rugby league player, and he talked about bruising, but that guy's just ran a marathon. I hope he didn't run into too many people in that race. It might have been a different type of marathon. But so I think the idea here is to simulate all those things and work out what works well. Because so many people say, oh, I swear by that ice bath. But do you have the actual clinical data to prove that? Or Billy told you and he seemed to go, okay, so I'll do it as well.
Well, to have an idea as to what it's actually doing to your heart.
It might be bad. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So digital twins track the parameters like stroke volume of your heart, cardiac output, ejection time, diastolic filling time, blood pressure. So all of these things are tracked with this digital twin. And again, we talk about this for some elite athletes at the moment, but the general discussion here is by 2035, you'll see people who, not every person, but people who are at risk. Again, people that might have had some incident, maybe they've had high blood pressure, maybe they're in an aged care facility, then, okay, we'll just get your digital twin heart built, James, and then we'll be able to simulate what's happening with your heart and then make some recommendations to what you should do. So 2035.
So I'm thinking about as a teacher, I've got a screen in my room with my heart on it, and as I'm teaching, you have kids just going, oh, sir, settle down. Take it easy, sir. Look over the screen.
Is that the simulated classroom or is that the real classroom? So the other one is that in India, the hospitals over there are already talking about having a digital twin to see how post-surgical outcomes can be managed better. So you've had surgery, let's see how your heart responds and what we should do post-surgery to make that recovery better.
Much better option than having a teacher check his heart.
Well, that sounds like fun as well. The challenge, I got Mr. Eddie's heart rate up to 150 today, 150
It's going off, sir. Look at it.
Anyway, quite fascinating. Digital twins, and I imagine that you've got a digital twin of your heart. Well, there's probably other things in your body you could have digital twins as well.
Yeah.
You know, your kidney, your liver.
Probably less interesting than the heart because they don't sort of change at the same sort of rate that the heart does. But
no, that's right.
But it'd be interesting nevertheless, yeah.
You might have a digital twin of your lungs and then simulate smoking and see what that does.
Imagine if you've got a whole digital twin of all your insides and you can just look at it on a flat top table or whatever and you can roll yourself over and check out what's going on in your large intestine at this particular moment.
Why not?
I need to go to the toilet right now.
I just had an Indian meal. What's going on?
All right, now, how are you with your technology take-up? Are you keeping up with the Joneses? Do you have a robotic vacuum cleaner? Because I think the Joneses now have a wet and dry robotic vacuum cleaner. Easy for me to say. And those wet and dry vacuum cleaners, those robotic vacuum cleaners, they've all got AI-powered stain detection these days. Apparently, or at least this new one does. Matt, it's getting tougher and tougher to keep up these days is my point.
You've got to keep buying your robotic vacuum cleaner every week at the moment. It seems like there's a new one coming out so often. I think the big breakthrough was one we talked about some time ago where it detected something that a dog might have left behind to not smear it everywhere. I thought that was a pretty big breakthrough. But this one's not bad either. Now, this one was revealed. You've got CES, which a lot of people like to show their new products off, the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. But some people also choose other ones around the world. And this one was revealed at IFA Berlin. And I wanted to talk about that one particularly because I like the fact that IFA has now become a backronym. One of my favourite little things is a backronym. So you know how much I love my acronyms or backronyms even one step further. So IFA in German stands for International Funkstalling, which supposedly, if my German was anywhere near correct, would translate to International Radio Exhibition, because this started back when they were exhibiting new things with radio. Obviously, it's moved on from that. But for those looking at the IFA, we go, hold on, International Radio Exhibition doesn't really look like IFA. So now they've come up with a backronym, which is Innovation for All. So it's gone from a German meaning to an English meaning that's not quite right to a backronym, but I'm still not completely happy because, as you know, a backronym's got to be a word. IFA is actually an initialism. Yeah. And back initialism doesn't sound quite as sexy as backronym.
Time to start writing that strongly worded email.
That's right. I can feel it coming on right now. Now, let's get on to the real topic, which is Dyson have unveiled their Spot+Scrub AI robot. Now, I've got robotic vacuum cleaners, and they go off and they randomly bounce around and they clean things vaguely and they come back and it's done a reasonable job. But if there's somewhere on your floor that's a bit dirtier, it just goes and gives it the normal treatment. It just goes over it once in its random movements. And that's not good enough. So Dyson has said, we've now got a Spot+Scrub version, so it uses AI, and as it's doing its random cleaning, it goes, here's a bit of a spot here. I'll go and put a bit more attention on this.
Yeah, okay.
It goes and treats that, and then, hold on, it's still not quite right. I'm going to go back and keep doing it. It's a persistent little fella, and it'll go back.
Good on it.
That's right, it. And I don't know if it ever gives up eventually and goes, you know what, I just can't get it. It'll have a few cracks. And
it's
then
just a pattern in the carpet.
That's right. So, yeah, that's right, it could be that. So it does that, which I love the idea of that, because we want to be able to make sure that our robotic devices are doing the whole job for us, not vaguely, it's almost close enough, that'll do sort of attitude.
Yeah.
We want
so
it done
that's
properly.
not a vacuum cleaner at all. That's just a little robot that drives around your
That's right. That's right. That's my kid. You know, that'll do that. I ran over that with a mop. That's fine. So it identifies stains, responds, cleans, checks again. And it does say in its literature, it repeats until the stain is gone. But, gee, that sounds pretty impressive.
That's a big promise to make.
It is. If I spill a bunch of engine oil on my timber floor, then it's going to be there until the timber floor is worn away. So until maybe it's gone, until vaguely it's gone. It also recognises 200 types of obstacles, Lego, socks, cables, I'm assuming deposits from dogs as well. And
Fingers crossed about that.
Yeah, that's right. And then it does two things in one. It vacuums and mops. So it detects a hard floor, it mops. It detects a soft floor, carpet, it vacuums. So I love that idea as well because, again, I've got one of my robotic vacuum cleaners, I've got some little sensors set up that puts across an electronic signal to block the timber from the carpet so that it only stays on the carpet area because I don't want it going across onto the timber area. So that sounds fairly good as well. And then it all has a base that it goes back to, not just for charging, but for emptying the water and emptying the actual dirt.
Right.
And it's a bagless base. So it basically just picks up all that in the base and then you empty that out without having to use a bag. Most of the bases have a bag that it puts all the dirt into. So not a bad system overall. we can't buy it yet. I'm not sure why, but China is the first country it's being released in later this year. China,
Right.
of all the countries, Dyson being an English brand,
Yeah.
could have gone to. Anyway, the US next year. So maybe they feel like China is really jumping on their robotics. I'm not sure. But it'll come to good old Oz at some particular stage. People at IFA in Berlin said that this was more evolutionary rather than revolutionary, but it's got a few things in that I'm pretty impressed with. So I don't mind if they keep evolving rather than having a complete breakthrough, but we are getting better with them until eventually we get Rosie the robot and we don't need a robotic vacuum cleaner because Rosie does it all for us.
That's right. And just a word of encouragement, just try to keep up with the Joneses because it's worth it in the long run, I guess. We share so much of our lives with the entire world these days. It's pics or it didn't happen. Now, it's the norm, and it's learned from an early age. But we should all know that once the image goes online, you no longer have any control over its use. And Matt, there are some disturbing repercussions from careless posting, particularly by kids.
Yeah, and probably more parents who are so proud of what their kids are doing and post things. And it disturbs me a little bit to the level that people go to. So the AFP, the Australian Federal Police, have got a Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation, and they found in the number of incidents each year has gone up quite dramatically. So in 2021-22 financial year, 36,600 incidents. That sounds pretty scary and a lot to me. The next year went up to 40,232. The next year, 58,503. And then in the financial year just completed, 82,764 incidents of some form of child sexual exploitation. And one of the things that they do is they will take ordinary family images. So, for example, here's my child at first day of school. Wow, how exciting is that? It's a really exciting day for your child, the whole family, your friend, etc. So you take a photo outside the school and people can see the photo of the child and they can see the parents, they can see the school crest or the school where it might be, and that might be enough information for them to go and either start approaching those children or even just using those images in some way that they were never meant to be used out there online. Sports days, backyard parties, all these things are going into the collection of some of these offenders. And when they do catch some of these offenders, when they look at some of these photos, they've got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of images that have typically been scoured from the internet and typically around their local area. So that's what gets really scary. Yeah. So anything that gives you anything at all in the background is enough for some of these people to go and just start doing some grooming or approaching some of these kids. And especially, for example, and I'm not trying to give people ideas, I'm sure they've had these ideas long before I did. So here's Mary posting on her social media page about young Johnny starting his first day at school. And then the next day, or maybe a week later, someone turns up, "Oh, Johnny, Mary, your mum said to pick you up today." Oh, okay. If mum said that, that's okay. Like, that's how simple it can be. They know where to go because they saw the school. They know the mum's name because it's on social media, and they know the child's name. And they know what the child looks like because there's a photo there.
It's such a sad thing because childhood is something to be celebrated, and people like to share their kids growing up and making milestones, etc., etc. But if you give any clues about life at all, they can be taken in the wrong way.
Yeah, that's exactly
the repercussions.
Right. The AFP has stressed that this is a whole of community response. So basically putting it out there to say, be mindful of what you do. Any photos with kids, be mindful of that. Make sure you're not sharing images. Make sure you're not revealing information about yourself. So a whole range of things to be careful of there. And even just things like your social media, just go and have a look every now and again at your friend list. Oh, hold on. I don't know that friend. I don't know who that is. I wonder how they became a friend. Maybe someone asked to be a friend one time and just said yes. I thought I knew them, but that's a bit strange. So just have a look at those friend lists. Maybe location tagging, maybe not have that turned on, for example. Logos, just be conscious. If you've got some photos with logos there, maybe remove those, blur the logo. Just you be conscious and just, it sounds unfortunate to me, but just be a bit suspicious of what people might look at. And remember, there's 8 billion people out there in the world that can look at your images once you put them online.
That's right.
So it's a bit sad, a bit scary, but you just got to be, I suppose, mindful of all of this that's going on.
Yeah, wariness. Now, we've always been very cautious about leaning too heavily into Dr. Google for a diagnosis, given just a handful of symptoms. But Matt, You now have a story of ChatGPT giving some quality advice for a genuine medical emergency.
Yeah, and we have heard some bad stories about ChatGPT giving advice that people have taken too literally and then had bad outcomes from that. But this particular person shared a story where he said he had some abdominal pain and just went, oh, gee, it's a bit sore. Whatever, maybe I ate some things that weren't agreeing with me, whatever. If I only had my digital twin of my stomach, I would have been able to see what was going on. But went to bed. The next morning, he went, oh, actually, it's feeling worse. Sometimes you go to bed and you wake up the next morning feeling fantastic. Oh. So we used to talk about or joke about Dr. Google, and Dr. Google would give you vague advice picked from various sites across the internet. Yeah. And so he went and put his symptoms in and described it in detail, what happened the night before and how it had worsened that next morning. And ChatGPT said, go to the hospital now. And he said what struck him as being a bit different was that ChatGPT normally I talk about ChatGPT.
Casual,
that's right. Normally,
that last word.
I think ChatGPT's got two hands. On one hand, you could consider going to the hospital. On the other hand, it's probably nothing. So it's always got 2 points of view to try and be very down the middle.
Didn't mince its words at all.
It didn't, no. And so he said, that seems like it's a bit different to other advice I've received. I'm actually going to take that advice. And so he went straight to the hospital, and the doctors there said, well, thank goodness you came in. 30 minutes later, you probably would have lost an organ. Yeah, now, he didn't reveal exactly what happened. Yeah. That's understandable. I think that's fair enough. But what he was talking about was that, yes, this was a life-saving moment for him. And we see more and more people who do go to, in the old days, Dr. Google, now Dr. Chat, for their initial diagnosis because, let's face it, A, it's hard to get into doctors in general. B, we don't want to turn up and clog up emergency rooms at hospitals. No. And C, we go, I don't want to turn up, and they go, you're wasting our time. You just...
We call that a mozzie bite.
Yeah.
Having said that, we did take our son to the hospital for a mozzie bite once.
First child, obviously. So I think the thing here is that it's okay to use things like Chat and Dr. Google. It's okay to look at that, but we still need to apply our common sense to it as well and take that advice on board, and maybe with a grain of salt, but also just consider the whole scheme of things. But it is nice to have all that information there at your fingertips.
Absolutely.
And that's really what you go, when you see a doctor, you're going to a doctor and they've got all this information in their head and you're saying, I'm describing symptom A, B, C and D, and without them even realising it, they're narrowing down the potential items, and then they go, okay, it's this, or it's narrowed down on one of these, let's do some tests. And that's what ChatGPT is effectively doing. But I would still say see medical professionals, but it's good to see where ChatGPT has had a good outcome from a medical perspective.
Scammers have been working so hard in recent years, around the clock. Their tactics are as bold as they are sneaky and merciless. Anyone with a smartphone is fair game, and that includes pretty much everyone on the planet, give or take a few toddlers. So, Matt, where people have trouble defending themselves, are smartphones at least getting any wiser?
They are getting better, but I'll just going to tell you a quick story from a message I got from a listener this week where they thanked us for our podcast because they caught themselves before they got sucked into a scam. And it wasn't a big scam. It was a scam. They were looking for a couch, and they found a couch on Facebook Marketplace. So this is no disrespect to Facebook Marketplace, wonderful place, but obviously people on there sometimes aren't honest. And so they'd looked at this particular couch and went, oh, it's a good price. They'd messaged the person, how big is it? Can you give me the dimensions? Just a few simple questions like that. They answered those questions. Everything seemed fine. I'll pay you cash when you deliver it because they offered delivery. So no problems. And so they're thinking to themselves, well, how can this be a scam? They're going to turn up.
Yeah.
I'm going to see the physical couch.
Yep.
They're going to take it off the back of the ute or the truck or whatever, and I'm going to pay them some money. That seems like a good old-fashioned transaction, and lots of transactions are done on Facebook Marketplace every single minute of the day.
Yeah.
So surely that's okay. And then the crunch came. Sure, I'll deliver it tomorrow morning. Had the time booked, everything right. Oh, I just need some extra money to rent the truck that I need to get to take it there. Could you just send me, and the delivery fee had been discussed, but could you just send me the delivery fee before I turn up? And this person they went, oh yeah, that seems fair enough. Yeah, okay. And they went, how much? And $60. So sure. And they thought, well, $60, if all of this work is for a scam of $60, And then they started thinking about some words that we talked about, how automated these processes are and how it's a big industry. And this person might have been scamming hundreds of people at the same time. So $60 from you.
$60 is nothing.
That's right. But if you can get it from 100 people today, that's not too bad an income. So then they did something that we've talked about before, doing a reverse image search. So they took a photo of the couch and just dropped that into Google search images. So when you go to Google, there's a little picture of a camera, click that, and they found, gee, this was a popular couch. It was on sale on probably 10 different sites across the world. There was someone in Kentucky, someone in Missouri, so all these couches. And funnily enough, they all had a similar history. This couch was 1.5 years old. They were redoing their backyard, so they didn't have room for this couch now. Unbelievable.
You're going to need more than $60 if you're going to deliver it from Kentucky.
That's right. So that's when they said, hold on. And they didn't say, I think you're a scammer. They just said, no, I won't pay you beforehand, sorry, but I'll pay you the money when you turn up with cash. And they said the next reaction from this particular person on Facebook Marketplace was to block them. Yeah. So they went, thank goodness, they sent me a message, said, thank you very much.
They're onto us.
I was just a little bit more suspicious. So that still, with all the different controls we might have in place, that scam still could be utilised. And I think to myself, just if you're a scammer like that, just go and take a photo yourself that's a separate photo of that same couch or whatever. So we've got a whole range of different things happening now with people being better at scamming and the phone companies and the phone providers trying to be better at stopping those. Fake toll messages, AI-enabled robocalls, virtual SIM swaps, all of those things are targeting mobiles in particular. 50% rise in 2024 compared to 2023. So more of those because the scammers are adapting. When you've got criminals using AI for impersonation, and I think this one that person sent me that message about, it probably wasn't a person answering them, it was probably AI answering each one of those because they'd have standard responses. I'm not going to waste my time for $60, but I can let AI do all that. Deep fakes, scalable fraud. So when we've had things like scam likely, when you get a phone call sometimes, when you see that likely scam, suspicious call, scam likely, that's one basic defence, but we're getting better at that. So iOS 26 from Apple has got call screening. Android has got something similar as well, where if it's an unknown caller, you can set up your phone to automatically answer that call and say, please say your name and the reason for your call, and I'll determine whether or not I send it through to the owner of this phone. And if they go, I'm a scammer, I'm trying to take your money, that usually means it gets hung up on. That's right.
That's the biggest clue.
But the scammers often would hang up. And for me, if I rang someone and it said, state your name and reason, and it was a legitimate reason I was ringing someone, I'd probably go, oh yeah, bit annoying, but sure, I understand why. You're trying to stop scammers. So you say your name and that message comes up on the person's screen on their phone. Oh, yes, this is James. He's ringing about rescheduling your podcast time. Oh, okay, no worries, and take the call. Now, it wouldn't happen with you because I've got your phone number in my phone. But if it was a random phone number or if you're ringing from a different phone one day, you'd say that message. I'd see the message on my screen and go, oh, yep, I know who that is. I'll take the call. So that's not too bad. A bit clumsy in the fact that we're having to put these sort of filters in place to try and get around it. The other one is that text filtering. So in the past, we've had phone companies do text filtering. They just look for words like urgent or verify, and that was enough for them to go, likely scam. But now they're changing the spelling of those. The scammers are trying to get around it in different ways. So now they're just looking at pressure and urgency, just the tone of the text. And that might be great because my kids might say, Dad, hurry up. We're about to go out to dinner. Can you get dressed and come out to dinner? That might be enough for them to go, oh, likely scam. Then I can say to the kids, sorry, it looked like a scam message, kids. I didn't get that one. But it also looks at the history of phone numbers across the whole range of numbers out there so that it sees whether phone numbers are common to be used in scams. Scammers then try and use different phone numbers. So it just seems this constant leapfrog process. We get better at it, then the scammers get better at it. One of the ones
I'm glad it's becoming important, or it has become important for the people who deliver technology to us.
Yeah.
That the protection is also important.
Well, my mum said to me years ago, she goes, oh, Matthew, I keep getting these silly messages. Can you stop that, please? I went, Mum, if I could come up with a way to stop that, I reckon I'd go all right from a financial perspective, because the one who can solve this problem categorically is the one who wins the game. So both Android and iOS keep coming up with different things. Phone manufacturers, phone providers are coming up with things.
But we know that the win is only ever going to be temporary.
Correct.
That you build a bigger mousetrap and Mother Nature will build a bigger mouse.
That's exactly right.
So,
it's interesting though, one of the major carriers in Australia at the moment, a lot of their advertising about their service is about their ability to stop scams. It used to be who's got the best coverage.
Yeah.
But now they're saying we'll stop scams better than the other guys, so go with us as a phone provider. So that's obviously a big focus on that. The interesting part, though, I found as well is that the average scam loss per person in Australia is $100, Aussie $100.
Okay.
In the US, it's US $45, so it translates to close to $100.
About the same, yeah.
But it's not much in the whole scheme of things, and we often joke about it that we know how much the reported scams cost us, the billions of dollars, but we don't know the unreported scams because, hey, they're unreported.
They're unreported.
And I reckon a lot of those $100 scams are the unreported ones because I lost $100, gee, that's annoying, kick myself. I'm not going to waste more of my time to go and then report that scam for a miserable $100. I know I'm not going to get the $100 back. It's just I'm wasting more of my time chasing some flea bag who's scammed me out of some money. So how many of those are unreported? That's the really scary part.
Yep.
And my answer would be a lot. So they're still happening. At the moment, the big one in Australia is tax time scams. They've got these very realistic impersonation messages. They're targeting individuals via voice and via SMS. And you don't want to be behind your tax. You don't want to be in trouble with the tax man. But more importantly, they put the carrot rather than the stick because they say, get your tax refund. We know you've got a $10,000 tax refund. Oh, wow, I didn't think I had that much coming. Oh, I better get my tax. Oh, click on that link. Fantastic. So, gee, they're good. And sometimes they're good at really preying on our weaknesses. So greed is a weakness that humans have. And so there's one.
And also some of the luck comes just in moments of weakness. You're just tired. You've been working too hard or whatever.
Busy.
And you're busy and
That's
you're just not thinking everything through.
So the latest term for people to use out there at the next friendly barbecue is vishing. V-I-S-H-I-N-G. We've talked about phishing, P-H-I-S-H-G-I-N-G. In the past, this is now vishing. Automated voice impersonation. So it's basically the same concept as phishing, but using voice rather than an email. So vishing. So throw that term around generally at the next barbecue you're at.
Now, no surprises. The market domination that Tesla celebrated in the EV space for so long has faded somewhat recently. That's probably for a number of reasons, but a key reason is that their competition has really stepped up. Now, while Tesla have been working hard to improve their range and diminish any driver's anxieties, they may have been left behind by BMW for the time being, Matt.
I'm excited by this, James.
Yeah?
I'm excited by traditional manufacturers who say, hey, we're being left behind. We better try and catch up because that's better for all of us. Competition is great.
Yeah.
And I've talked to some people who have liked the idea of EVs, but they just don't feel comfortable with these new fang-dangled brands, BYD, Tesla. I don't know those. I don't know the history of these companies. Who are they? Are they going to be here today, gone tomorrow?
They need their old favourites.
They need their old favourites. And I remember one friend of mine ended up buying a Jaguar EV, and I must admit, I wasn't that impressed by the first Jag EV that came out. One of the things that particularly unimpressed me was the fact that it gave fake engine noises because they were trying to appeal to the market that didn't really want an EV but wanted an EV.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine bought a Jaguar and they weren't that impressed, and so they've kind of gone off EVs a bit because they bought a model that wasn't great, but they bought that based on the fact that there was a Jaguar dealer, a physical dealership they could go and buy it from and get it serviced at. They felt more comfortable with all of that. So traditional manufacturers like BMW, and I know VW are the same, they're saying, and maybe it's no coincidence, they're both German brands, and they're going, we need to be at the head of the game. We were leading manufacturers for a long time. We're going to be left behind if we don't get onto this. So BMW has identified the number one issue for people looking at an EV is range. So they've said, range, you want range, we'll show you range. Their new iX3, fully electric sports activity vehicle, they're calling it now, is claimed as a range of 805 kilometres. Now, we know as you go faster, the range reduces, but even at highway speeds, I reckon if the normal testing shows 805, I reckon you'd easily get 600 on the highway.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That's getting pretty impressive. And so if people have got a bit of range anxiety, 805, happy days. That sounds pretty
We
impressive.
all know you should be stopping every couple of hours for a break anyway to be safe, but people just need to know that they can do that.
That's right.
600 kilometres in one hit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, they've also got 400 kilowatt charging capacity, which is fine if you've got chargers that do 400 kilowatts, but at a 400 kilowatt capacity, it can add 350 kilometres of range in 10 minutes. So again, your logic is I drive for a couple of hours. Typically at highway speed, you might do 200 kilometres in a couple of hours. I'll just have a quick stop, grab a cup of coffee, go to the toilet, whatever, just a little break, plug in, 10 minutes later, I'm back to where I started from. Fantastic. So again, that's something that I think is important. And I know when I'm planning a trip, I'll look at where the charges are in each town.
Yeah.
And I'm actually fascinated to see what I might discover there. It might not have been a place I would have stopped at in the past. So these charging centres are going to become hubs of a whole range of things, I think, because it's better than a petrol station. Petrol station, you're in very quick, you go in, you buy some chocolate, you walk out the door. You might be spending 10, 15 minutes in these charging stations. What can I do in that 10, 15 minutes?
Well, yeah, these chargers will just pop up in car parks around the place, as they have done.
They have done. And where are they? The essential component for me would be to have a good coffee shop near every charger, because that's a convenient thing to do, and it takes that little bit more time. So 805 kilometres, this is part of what BMW is calling their new class, NEUEKLASSE. We'll just call it new class for here in Aussie. This whole new class brand overhaul. So it's not just, here's an EV model, there you go out there and buy that. They've got an entire new range, 40 new or updated models by 2027. Not all electric, they're still doing some hybrids and still doing some internal combustion ones, but 40 new models, because they see that the market is ripe to be picked, and all these newcomers, they want to be beating them off because we're BMW. We've got history here. Yeah. We don't want to just go and say, okay, we'll just let you guys have this market. We're gonna try and tackle this market. So I see, my prediction anyway, is that companies like VW and BMW are really going to fight back, and they're going to come back with some pretty impressive products, I hope, because that's good for you and I. I want it to be easier than which Tesla do I buy. I want it to be harder than which Tesla do I buy, because that's the decision. Me as a consumer right now, that's the decision I'm making. Do I buy the Model 3 or the Model Y? That's it. I want to say, which one of these 20 fantastic models out there do I think is going to give me the best thing for me?
And that's it. And look, the other thing I was just thinking about with the range anxiety, there's less pressure on you to charge to 100%. We know that it fast charges really fast to about 80%, and then it starts to slow down. Well, if you can feel comfortable that you only need to be at 80% and you can make it easily in the next couple of towns or 3 or 4 towns away.
Well, using your logic there, which I think you're spot on, if you get 800 kilometres out of 100%, 80% of that would be 8 8 to 64, so 640 kilometres, out of that. So again, that's not too bad. That gives you more than enough, and we've talked about it before. 0 to 80 can take about the same time as 80 to 100, because it goes constant current and then changes to constant voltage charging, which is obviously slower to protect the battery. So all of these things I think are pretty exciting. One thing I did find fascinating is that in the last year, EVs made up 30% of BMW's sales. And I found that incredible, but I researched a bit further. They're including plug-in hybrids in that, which, as you know, I poo-poo a little. So, but still, at least it's not just the internal combustion engine. So they're seeing the writing on the wall. And I found it interesting. I found a Mercedes-Benz dealer in another location that is actually taking on BYD as well. So the dealership is Mercedes-Benz. Typically, they were very high-class, very sophisticated dealers. And we've also got BYD because we see the writing on the wall. Yeah. So,
Isn't that interesting?
In Europe, just a quick one, BYD has taken over Tesla worldwide now as the number one EV seller. In Europe, in July this year, BYD sold 9,698 EVs. Let's call it 10,000. Tesla only sold 6,600. So a little bit of that has been Elon Musk associated with people that maybe have damaged his reputation. So there's been a drop in EV sales from Tesla, but also there's been a drop because there's good alternatives out there. So it's all very exciting. The iX3 should be available next year in Australia, and we'll be one of the first in the world to get it. So I'm pretty excited to see that and take it for a bit of a spin.
Isn't that great news? And that's all we've got time for this week, folks. Thank you, linesman. Thank you, ball boys. It's time that we were on our way. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
Well, I'm definitely not going to the toilet now, James. I'm staying away from the toilet after this latest news and making sure that I would never admit to using my phone on the toilet. But if I did, maybe I should just leave it in the office next time I go to the toilet.
Yeah, well, I think I might just have a comfort stop and maybe read a magazine or do a crossword.
Well, someone said to me...
a quick one.
A quick one, that's right. Someone said to me that it's just a bit gross using your phone in the toilet, so I didn't talk to them anymore about what I do on the toilet. So...
And thank you for tuning in once again, folks. Tech Talk with Matthew Dickinson is recorded in front of an audience composed mainly of stuffed toys that were once owned by real live children. You can form your own opinions about that. I'm your host, James Eddy, and as always, it's a pleasure to bring you this tidy little podcast each week. We hope that you'll take the trouble to join us again next week, and if you haven't done so already, hit the like button, subscribe, and bring a friend along for the next episode. See you again next week.